A stranger walks into the room. You glance up. You haven't heard their voice. You don't know their name. You know nothing about where they came from, what they believe, or whether they're kind. And already, in less time than it takes to blink, your brain has reached a verdict. You think you're fair. You think you give people a chance. You believe you wait to see who someone really is before you decide anything about them. That's the story you tell yourself. And it's a comforting one, but the real answer is far stranger. The decision was made in about 1/10 of a second, and you had almost no say in it. So, what is your brain actually doing in that first silent moment when it meets a face? And why does it move so fast? Let me take you inside the 10th of a second that quietly runs your entire social life. In 2006, two psychologists at Princeton University, Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov, designed an experiment that should unsettle anyone who believes first impressions are earned slowly. They showed people photographs of strangers, but only for a flash. 100 milliseconds, a 10th of a second, and then the image was gone. After each face, they asked a simple question: can you trust this person? Then they did something clever. They gave a different group the same faces with no time limit at all. Stare as long as you like, they said. Take all the time in the world. And then they compared the two sets of answers. They were almost identical. All that extra time changed almost nothing. The slow, careful viewers reached the same conclusions as the people who saw the face for a single flash. The only thing the extra seconds added was confidence. People felt more sure of their judgment. But the judgment itself had already been made in that first 10th of a second. Sit with that for a moment. The verdict your brain reaches in the blink of an eye is, for all practical purposes, the same verdict it reaches after a full minute of study. More time doesn't make you more accurate, it just makes you more certain. And certainty and accuracy, as you're about to see, are very different things. So what exactly is your brain reading in that flash? Todorov spent years trying to answer that. He mapped the snap judgments people make about faces, hundreds of them, and discovered something elegant. Almost everything you instantly feel about a stranger collapses into just two questions. The first is about warmth. Is this person going to help me or hurt me? The second is about strength. Could this person actually do it? Weak or powerful? Harmless or dangerous? Friend or foe? Capable or not? Your ancestors needed to answer both of those questions, and they needed to answer them fast, because getting them wrong could cost a life. A trustworthy face tends to have softer features, upturned corners of the mouth, a hint of a natural smile even at rest. A dominant face tends to have a heavier brow, a stronger jaw, a harder set to the eyes. You read these signals automatically. You've been reading them your whole life, and you never once chose to. Now, you might think these instant judgments are just harmless little reflexes, background noise. Surely they don't actually shape anything that matters, but here is where it stops being a curiosity and starts being a little frightening. In 2005, Todorov and his colleagues ran another study. They showed people the faces of pairs of real political candidates, people the viewers had never seen before, for about 1 second each. No names, no parties, no policies, just two faces. And they asked one question: which of these two looks more competent? Then the researchers went and checked who had actually won those elections in the real world. The candidate who simply looked more competent had won around 7 times out of 10. Read that again. A 1-second glance at a stranger's face predicted the winners of real elections roughly 70% of the time. Millions of voters believed they were weighing ideas, records, promises. And to a startling degree, the outcome had already been written in the shape of a jaw and the set of a pair of eyes. You like to think these choices run on argument. Some of it turns out, runs on faces. And it isn't only faces. Your brain thin slices everything. In the early 1990s, 2 researchers, Nalini Ambady and Robert Rosenthal showed people silent video clips of college teachers in front of their classes. No sound at all, just 30 seconds of body language, gesture, and movement. They asked complete strangers to rate how effective each teacher was. Then they compared those snap ratings to the evaluations given by real students who had sat in those classrooms for an entire semester. The match was uncanny. 30 silent seconds predicted what a full term of teaching produced. And when the researchers trimmed the clips down to just 6 seconds, the predictions barely weakened at all. They named it thin slicing. Your mind takes a razor-thin sliver of someone's behavior and, from it, paints a full and confident portrait of who they are. And it doesn't stop at teachers. In another study, researchers listened to short clips of surgeons talking, with the words filtered out so that only the tone of voice remained. From the tone alone, listeners could pick out which surgeons had been sued for malpractice. The warmth or the coldness in a voice, sliced down to a few seconds, carried that much information. So why would your brain be built this way? Why decide so much, so quickly, on so little? Because for almost the entirety of human existence, hesitation was deadly. Imagine one of your distant ancestors stepping around a boulder and suddenly facing a person they have never seen. There is no time for a careful conversation. There is no time to gather references. The wrong call, trusting a threat, or fleeing a friend carries a price paid in blood. A brain that could size up a stranger in a heartbeat, even if it was sometimes wrong, survived more often than a brain that paused to be sure. Deep inside your skull sit 2 small almond-shaped clusters of cells. They're called the amygdala, and you can think of them as your alarm system. They are astonishingly fast, faster than conscious thought itself. In 1998, a neuroscientist named Paul Whelan ran a study that reveals just how fast. He flashed fearful faces at people so briefly and hid them so quickly behind other images that the viewers never consciously saw them at all. Ask them, and they would swear no frightened face had ever appeared. But deep in their brains, the amygdala lit up anyway. Think about what that means. Your alarm responded to a face you didn't even know you had seen. The judgment had begun before awareness did. There is a fast, primitive pathway in your brain that can carry the sight of a threat almost straight to that alarm, before the slower, thinking parts of your mind have finished making sense of the image. By the time the conscious, reasoning you steps onto the stage, the first verdict has already been filed away. And here is where it turns uncomfortable. That ancient speed came with a cost, and you are paying it every single day. The very machinery that kept your ancestors alive is laughably easy to fool in the modern world. A trustworthy-looking face is not the same as a trustworthy person. When researchers actually measure it, they find almost no real connection between how honest a face appears and how honestly that person behaves. Worse, the most successful con artists often look extraordinarily trustworthy. That is precisely the tool they use. Your brain is running survival software written 100,000 years ago, in a world of strangers it was never designed for, and you cannot simply switch it off. You can't decide not to judge the next face you see. The verdict arrives whether you invite it or not, the same way your leg kicks out when a doctor taps your knee. There is even a name for one of its side effects, the halo effect. When someone looks attractive, or competent, or warm, your mind quietly assumes they must also be kinder, smarter, more honest, more capable, with no evidence at all. One good signal bleeds outward and colors everything else. Knowing this happens does not make it stop, but it does hand you a single, precious power. The power to pause and to question the verdict before you act on it. Because once you see this, you start to notice it everywhere. The job interview where the real decision was quietly made in the first 3 seconds, and the rest of the meeting was just the interviewer gathering reasons to justify it. The first date judged before the drinks ever arrived. The courtroom, where studies have found that defendants with more trustworthy-looking faces tend to receive lighter outcomes for the very same crimes. The new co-worker you decided you didn't care for reasons you could never quite put into words. Think of the dating app where a face is judged and dismissed with a flick of the thumb in under a second, hundreds of times in a single sitting. A whole person, an entire possible future, sorted into yes or no in the time it takes that ancient verdict to fire. Your ancestors used this exact machinery to survive a hostile wilderness. You use it to swipe past someone before their photo has finished loading. Every single day, you move through a world of strangers, and every one of them is reading you in exactly that same tenth of a second. Your face, your posture. The next time a stranger walks into the room and you feel that instant tug, like or dislike, trust or suspicion, warmth or cold. Pause for just 1 second. That feeling is real. It is powerful, but it is not the truth. It is a tenth of a second guess, made by an ancient alarm doing a job it was built for long before cities, before language, before a single one of the strangers you will meet today.